is going on, everybody? Welcome in to the North End Podcast, episode 235. My name is Zach Graham, your host here in the North End, joined, as always, by my good buddy. He's on record as my best friend. His name is Ian Michaud, and we call him E, sitting here on a Wednesday. Beautiful Austin, Texas. I see that little darts motion in your intro there for those on the YouTube. How you feeling, my friend?
Oh, I'm happy, man. Game week, excited to get there finally when we get the Seattle matchup. But some interesting stuff to chat about here. We're getting the All Star drop a little later. Salaries came out. Got a rumor to look over and everything's I'm ready. I've been itching for a game for a second now after we had this little break, but I'm ready to roll.
Yeah, same, dude. And everything that popped off before we went to record here on Wednesday just made me even more I'm back in. We took our little deep breath last week, right? We had some fun on Sunday, and now we're back into it, headed into the home stretch. So as E mentioned, plenty to discuss here on today's episode. We are going to start with our all-star roster reactions here in a moment. That will take place a few hours from now. So we are actually going to use the magic of technology, splice in kind of our live reactions to that announcement on Apple TV here this evening. More information on a player potentially arriving here in Austin soon, the salary drop, and of course previewing the Seattle match and the Sporting KC2 match for the second team. But before we get into all of that here today, want to remind you all listening or watching on the YouTube channel that you can support the show financially by downloading the audio versions of our episodes wherever you get your podcasts. And, if you're getting them from Apple, Spotify, wherever, usually there's a little toggle switch. You can toggle on auto downloads, and that'll allow you to support the show going forward, and you don't have to think about it again. You can go the extra mile, rate and review the show. And if you are watching on the YouTube channel, hitting the subscribe button does also help us grow the show, and you can hit the notification bell to know when a live stream pops up or a new episode goes live. And of course, here on episode 235, hit the thumbs up, like the video, help us battle the YouTube algorithm overlords, atone for your sins, wash yourselves clean in the waters of the North End. So let's take a moment here and transport ourselves to about 6 p.m. Central tonight and check in on what's going on with Coach Estevez and the All-Stars. Well, E, for now, this is the I'm Right podcast. Because Austin FC, 2 All-Stars here. Congratulations to Brandon Vasquez. And look, man, I'm playing favorites here. Bigger congratulations to Bradley Scott Stuver. Long overdue here with his first All-Star nod in his career. And jokes aside, not taken away from anything that Brandon has done, because he is our leading goal scorer. He has done the most for us in the box score so far. So well-deserved there as well. Austin's 2 All-Stars. What are your thoughts?
Love it, man. And this was the 2 guys that you targeted, that you said and thought were going to be the guys who were going to make the All-Star game. And I was right there with you as well. And like you said, congrats to BV for sure. But for Brad, man, just so well-deserved, and I don't know if he ever would have made it without some sort of leap to an All-Star game, and I think that is partially because of us being Austin FC and not being one of the upper echelon teams, not to take away from everything that Brad has done for this team, but I think he deserves it, and I'm just really, really excited for him.
Yeah, and I think it's tougher overall to break into this roster this year, because last year the team was 30 players. The roster is 26 this year. So Nico had even less wiggle room in terms of being able to squeeze these guys in here with a very mediocre record and placement in the table at the time that that this roster is announced. The press release from the team, talking about some of the accomplishments of these 2 so far this year. Talking about Brad first, they said Stuver has consistently been among the league's top shot stoppers in recent seasons, ranking in the top 5 for both saves and clean sheets in 2025. He led the league in saves in both 2023 and 2024, and he's Austin's all-time leader in appearances with 163, tallying 37 total shutouts. And we know that he's already well on his way to beating his own personal best in terms of clean sheets season. And in terms of Brandon Vasquez, he leads Austin with 8 goals across all competitions in his first season with the club. He scored the winning goal in the team's most recent match against New York Red Bulls, earns his second career MLS All Star selection after making the team in 2022, a season in which he also made MLS Best 11. So Stuver and third and fourth Austin FC players to make an All-Star roster, of course, following in the footsteps of Sebastian Driussi in 2022 and John Gallagher in 2023. Looks like we are going to get all 3 of our All-Star representatives, both players and Coach Nico, tomorrow following training. So both of those All-Stars are going to appear as players available to the media on our normal Thursday press availability. And I also saw the team tweeted out that Brandon Vasquez will be on Morning Footy on Thursday morning at 8 a.m. Central. So you can get your full All-Star fill on Thursday, and of course leading up to this game here in about a month at Q2 Stadium. But awesome to see this just a couple minutes ago. I kind of want to look at the full roster for a second before we move on, So I do think this is a cool graphic the league put out with these kind of records on the shelves there. Look, man,
that's good.
Maybe he doesn't play, but Lionel Messi is on the roster. And they mentioned on the broadcast they expect him to play. At least a little bit. So look, I think the value of our tickets just went up.
I'm right there with you, but like, I'm not expecting him to do much of anything, to be honest, but just still to be,
I'll take a goal.
To be in the presence, to be in the stadium while that dude's out there, that is pretty cool. So like, and I love this graphic. This is so good.
Yeah.
And like, I saw the jerseys before, and the jerseys are terrible.
Yeah,
they're awful. And like, this has a little Austin je ne sais quoi, as they say. You know what I mean? Like, this has a little Austin to it. You know what I mean? And we got these fucking jerseys that are just like predominantly white with some green and stuff. And it's like, what? Like, do something weird, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, put some dreadlocks on there, like for Willie and everything, some braids. You know, I don't know. This is a great graphic, though. This is well done.
I'll tell you, I am looking forward to seeing our boy Evander again. Being able to cheer for him is going to be fun. Being able to see Diego Rossi for the first time in person will be fun. And look, man, I'm going to be cheering for MLS, but I think I'm still going to be shouting "fuck Mike Boxall" when he's down there on our end. Look, even an All-Star game can't make me like that guy.
No, I saw that he was voted in, and I was just like, God damn it. You know, just come on. But this is not a day off for me and you. This is definitely going to be some shit talk. And, you know, Minnesota chanted "fuck Stuver." So
yeah, exactly.
We didn't forget.
We're going to tag you back, Mike.
The North does not forget.
The North remembers.
There it is.
All right. So picking it up in this part of our timeline, we don't know if we are thrilled, satisfied, upset, angry, who knows? the listeners do. I'm looking forward to finding out what happens. So let's go ahead and jump into this talk about Nicky Beloko, right? So if you've been paying attention to the Austin FC news over the last 6 weeks or so, you know that Nicky Beloko is a name in the Verde rumor mill here. And he was, of the 4 rumors that we've had coming into today, the guy that I think all of us in the kind of sicko-verse here in Austin thought was the most certain of these rumors, because Beloko back, I believe on like May 19th it was, reposted the actual rumor that we were all pulling from on his Instagram story. And a similar thing happened here today. Beloko reposts on his Instagram story a report from SFM Football, which doesn't appear on the surface. Minimal digging from me on this, because I definitely recognize the source here. I don't know what SFM Football is, but if the player is posting on his Instagram story that he's passed his medicals and is expected to be announced as a new Austin FC player, quote, in the coming hours, I take the player at his word. So it appears like we may be getting a Green Smoke live stream here before too long for Nicky Beloko.
Hell yeah. I mean, like we had him penciled in for a while here, just with everything that was swirling with him. And like you said, his confirmation of that repost and everything. Look, I'm excited about this guy.
Yeah.
I feel like the response has been a little bit tepid just because people have really been asking for an attacking mid. But when you look at his highlight tape, and again, I understand the highlight tape is showing the best of what these guys got, but so the way he moves,
Yeah.
his physicality, those two things alone, I think, are going to be advantageous for us, particularly if we're moving on from Ilya next season or what that looks like for Ilya on the second half of this season. So I'm excited about this. I think he looks like a very intriguing kind of prospect here that you can line up in the midfield. Somebody who's going to be physical, be able to get up and down. And I think that like some parallels with Danny,
Sure.
in regard to what they can both do on the defensive side of the ball. And I'll always take some more Danny Pereiras on the team. So I'm excited for Nicky to get over here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I think we can save kind of the super deep dive into Beloko for that potential Green Smoke live stream, but mentioning Ilya and Danny and some of these other guys in the midfield there, a little bit of a clearer picture here on Wednesday as we finally get the salary cap drop from MLSPA. So before we dive into the sheets that we have here, right, covering the roster and the salary cap, depth charts and all that stuff that we have at the northendpodcast.com. If you want to look at this full salary drop from the Players Association, you can find that on their website. It's mlsplayers.org, and you'll be able to navigate to their salary guide here. So we have it up on the screen for those watching on the YouTube. And you can see you and I were kind of going back and forth on some of the higher paid players here in the league. Of course, Messi is up top, a little north of 20 million in guaranteed comp. And that doesn't include everything he's getting from his rev share from like Adidas jersey sales and Apple TV and all that. But 20.4 mil for Messi, then 15 plus million for Lorenzo Insigne, who does not really play. And when him and Bernadeschi, who's making like 6.5 himself, Toronto's in a tough spot there. Tough to be a Toronto fan after over the last few years. A couple other names in here, right? You see Ricky Pooch in there. Jonathan Bamba, who was the new acquisition by Chicago Fire this offseason. Chucky Lozano in there. Miguel Almiron, right? It's mostly names you would expect here up at the top, league-wide.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Insigne number is just that is insane. Like like you said, we had to stop our initial recording and go back and start over because we saw that number quick and just started screaming what was going on. What did Austin came in? What, like the 23rd, 24th, something like total compensation near the bottom?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. And again, like total compensation is not really indicative of the total like quality of a roster, right? To me, it's more indicative of like the ambition, because those total compensation numbers can vary so wildly because of the DP structure and the rules they're in, right? Where like Leo Messi counts the same on Miami's salary cap as Osman Bukhari does on ours, but they're $20 million apart in what the teams are actually paying them. So again, that's where, when you have questions about stuff like that, you come to the northendpodcast.com, you open up the salary cap and roster spreadsheets here. And of course, more often than not, we're looking at the full roster from the senior and supplemental spot look here. But now that we have these salaries, it's time to open up these other tabs here, E. So now populated all these tabs that said, coming April 2025, which turned out to be mid-June, whatever's going on there with the PA. We have these numbers now. So I guess just kind of looking through some of the highlights here, and we can get a little bit of an extra zoom. I think we don't necessarily need those contract expiration dates up there. Brandon Vasquez, let's start with the DPs, right? BV coming in at $3.5 million in his guaranteed compensation. Keep in mind that your 3 DPs only hit the salary cap at the max cap hit, about $743,000 this year. Azuni right behind him, $2.2 million and some change. And then Book right there at 1.5. So these came in kind of right about where I thought they would. Although I guess I should admit, I think Vasquez, the number on him is a little bit higher than I expected.
That was definitely a little bit higher than I expected when we first saw this. But, this is pretty standard for your 3 DPs there. I thought Azuni might be higher, to be honest. I thought if you had to ask me right off the jump, I would have said Azuni over BV for most guaranteed compensation, but that is not the case.
Yeah, and then right below him, right, we knew he was going to be right there because he's our lone TAM player, but it's Julio Cascante, and his guaranteed comp has gone up to 853,750. So you're using at least 110,000 in TAM on Julio Cascante, but we can talk about it in a moment where I think it's actually a little bit higher than that, closer to the maximum amount of TAM we can apply to his roster hit there, a budget hit, as it were. Then this is also surprising to me, and I think it's because Robert Taylor with Miami last year was making, I think, around $350,000 if memory serves. On his new deal, $633,000. So that will be something that Roto has to contend with and is, of course, planning for next year, because he hits our cap this year at $150,000. Apparently, with the rules, Miami bought him down with GAM to $150K, the maximum number you can use to buy a player down to, and that stuck on his budget charge through the trade. So I know we discussed that at the time of the trade, but just a nice little reminder there. But that's a significant difference, right? That's adding an extra $500,000 in budget charge to Robert Taylor next year, whether you use GAM on him or not. So that was a little bit eyebrow raising to me.
Yeah, that's going to have to be something like a bridge that we're going to have to cross when we get there, because that is a significant jump. I mean, I don't want to be too much of a pocket watcher here or anything like that, looking at other people's money and everything like that. But I mean, you just can't forecast Julio being around next season once
at this number for sure.
That's not happening. You see some other guys here that kind of raise your eyebrows. Like to see where Diego came in at. Obviously, the value you're getting out of Owen with a 0 cap hit. I mean, we've been waiting for these numbers for some period of time, that I feel like the initial luster has been shined off of this. Komenich 350, obviously Biru locked into that starting spot at 275. But again, you see these things and these are numbers on paper. It's never going to be perfect in regard to the hierarchy of who's playing, what they're capable of doing, and then trying to line that up exactly where it's this all makes sense and is fleshed out. So of course there's going to be some stuff that raises your eyebrows, but nothing here that's just too incredibly egregious in my opinion.
Yeah, there's nothing that's just absolutely weighing us down, as there has been in the past, right? Or at least blocks of contracts in the cap table here. I wouldn't say we are pocket watching. We're just trying to look at this from a roster build, an efficiency standpoint, right? And to that point, we discussed during the listener question segment on Sunday about, I think you named Ilie as the overrated player at the moment. $600K for Ilie, that makes me think that option is not getting picked up. And so obviously we can discuss more about Ilie as we move through the second half of the season. Maybe he, if transitioned to the coaching staff, we've seen him on the sidelines, when he's not been in the game. So that number jumped out a little bit at me, but I don't think we should be too surprised, because I think he was a max cap hit guy with LAFC last year, and for good reason, given the way he was playing, with them the last few years.
And I would say that there was probably some healthy competition in regard to other teams wanting to sign him. I imagine that his market was a little better than some of these guys that we've seen, and therefore he demanded a higher value. So I'm definitely not upset about that, but I'm right there with you where contracts up in 2025, I don't see us picking that up.
Yeah. Well, and some of the other numbers that we didn't have, right? So obviously some of the new guys coming in, but also those contract extensions, because there was a flurry of those in the fall. So you see a guy like Danny Pereira finally getting the compensation closer to what he deserves. I think you could make an argument that maybe he could command an even higher salary, but guaranteed comp a little over $500,000 now. This is a guy who I don't think was making more than 150 on that GA contract after he was drafted to the team in the expansion year. So a little bump up there for Brad. Brad is now finally over $500,000 in his guaranteed comp as well. Savovich and Dessler both on 550. That's a new number for Savovich, obviously, as a new player. Dessler got a $50K raise from what he came in on last summer. Svatak also got about 200K, a 200K bump from where he came in at last summer. Gallagher, you mentioned Kolmanich, right? That 350 for Kolmanich is the same contract number he was on, but that number in terms of his cap hit has gone up because the U22 protection is no more. Heinz Ike, 325,
Yeah.
right? Could probably command a little bit more, but that is like a 60% raise from where he was last year. A touch under 200K. Biru, same kind of story, like 35-ish% raise, but still a great deal. And then you see Rubio down there too, right? You got him on the 208, which means you're spending 104K in game on him to keep him on that supplemental roster. So again, I could sit here and talk about this for hours. But to wrap up this kind of salary talk here, total budget space available. And again, this is our best estimate. We are not factoring in any like amortized transfer fees or any conditional GAM trades, right? In the sense of like where, so the Fagundes trade 2 years ago, right? There was conditional GAM coming back to us based on performance incentives for Diego. We don't know at this moment if we're getting any or some portion of that. And, some other trades that Roto has made had conditional GAM attached, either outgoing or potentially inbound. So this estimate does not factor those in. But to the best of our knowledge, right around 2.6 million in total budget space is available. And we know from our TAM budget, which this season is 2.25 million, if my memory serves. I guess I could just do a little scroll here because on this page, you will find that information. 2.225 million is the TAM budget this year. We know the team is having to use at least 110 of that on Julio right now. And you could spend like 700K, I think, to get him down to that 150 number. So our TAM budget right now is like between 1.5 million and 2.1 million, somewhere in there. I think that number is probably closer to the 1.5 number that we're using more TAM than not on Julio, because that would free up, again, either GAM or just normal cap space in this total budget picture that we have here. I think that's the best way to kind of try to just estimate the total space, not where it's coming from.
Word. I'm convinced. You got me.
Sure. Okay. Well, that would allow us to, have space for a potential U22, and not just another TAM player that's coming in. So, and we will get an even better picture of this in about a month when these signings start showing up here in Austin. We get those press releases, which can give us some clues, further clues to this puzzle. So another thing I will say, you can go over to our year by year depth chart with the cap hits, right, to see which players at which positions are locked in year over year here. This little map, right, extends to 2030 now. Duber-Sarski is the only player with a team option that far out into the future. But I think, again, this is a pretty decent visual for those nerds who are akin to us that like looking at this kind of shit.
Absolutely. And like you look at some of these contracts expiring coming up here, man, and you can make some moves. I mean, I'm not going to name too many names here, but we talked about potentially moving on from Cleveland. We don't think Julio is going to get picked up. You don't think Ilya is going to get picked up. That in itself right there is like 1.7 million. So like, we're still not there. We're still not to the point where we really, really want to be with this club, but the foundation is definitely there. And it's always nice to see these figures come in so we can actually get a visual representation of what these guys are making and how this team has been built out.
Yeah, and it's just so much better than it was even a year ago, but certainly 18 months ago. The cap sheet has been tidied up here. And so before we get into the Seattle preview, the contracts that are expiring this season, they all have team options. So, Roto has control over which direction he wants to go with these guys. But it would be Cascante, Ilya, Danny, Stuver, Kolmanich, Heinz Ike, Cleveland, and then you've got Rubio, Farkalin, and Riley Thomas. Those are the expiring contracts coming up this winter. So anything else for you right now on the salary stuff?
No, all set.
All right, well, let's talk about our opponents here on Saturday. Headed out on the road to take on Seattle Sounders. And historically, when we see Seattle on the schedule, it has been bad news. I mean, all time between these two teams, 8 historical meetings, just 1 victory for Austin, 3 draws and 4 losses. But I guess look, plenty of frustration, right, has come from facing the Seattle team. I think about the teenager game in 2021, where Raul, that teenager game was combined with Rui Diaz, 40-yard chip goal right in front of our faces there in the north end. I think about the 2023 match where Rigoni scores and he's denied by Drew Fisher and his crew. Even after a review, they don't give him that goal. And then I, of course, doing my little research for today's preview, went back and actually just watched the highlights of that game. Oh, we gave up the fucking winner to Seattle in the South End in the 90th minute. I did not remember it being that painful, but it makes sense why we were so riled up after that game.
Yeah, I mean, also because of that call, man.
It's
just lives in infamy now. Just ridiculous. I mean, like this is a great franchise. You know what I mean? Like, they run their shit like a well-oiled machine. This is a good team. They have structure, they have schemes, they have good coaches up and down the roster, and they continue to get stuff out of guys that they've counted on for years. Like, they have continuity built up. We understand how good their youth program is as well.
The academy.
Their academy is fantastic. So, like, this is just one of those like teams that even you look across all sports that we follow here, is just one of those like mainstays where it's like, this team is going to be good no matter who they're working with because they have this thing set up properly. So someone we should strive to be more like, but it was just going to be a really tough game. But on the positive side of things, you might have caught him at the right time. Like in all the other matchups we've had versus Seattle, never have they come off of Botafogo, PSG, Atleti. So like, this is going to be the opportunity here to see if we can go up there and steal some points. But this is just a really, really good club.
Well, and let me sprinkle a little bit of North End optimism on this kind of historical outlook between these two teams, man, because 4 of these 8 matches have been up there at Lumen Field. We've got 5 points from those 4 matches somehow. Like 2023, the Zardes and Finley goals power them past the Sounders 2-1 up there. And then last year, it was disgusting. But you got a 0-0 draw. We generated 0.04 XG in that game. 2 total shots, 1 on target. And the shot on target was just a slow roller from Valencia, 40 yards out. And they actually gave us 0.04 XG in that one. So, like, we have found relative success because Lumen Field is one of the best home field advantages historically in MLS. The Sounders are very tough up there. I want to say, I don't remember which team, but I feel like I've heard over the years, like watching a random Seattle game, oh, this opponent hasn't won there in 14 years or like this, things like that. So I guess I am huffing a little bit of the hopium there, not just from the team's Austin's recent form, but just that historically we have gone up there and battled it out. And I mean, averaging more than 1 point per game at Lumen Field, I don't think just on the surface, any casuals would think that Austin has had that relative level of success up there.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
So this is our first time seeing Seattle, so we'll get the quick historical rundown of this franchise, right? Established in 2007 in terms of their MLS footing, and they began their expansion season in 2009. They were the 15th MLS club. And this is a term that I know is common in soccer circles, and you brought it up. I forget which preview for earlier this season, but they are a Phoenix club, right? Meaning that they replaced a former club from a lower level. So the former Sounders team played and was active from 94 to 2008 and played in the APSL and then the USL First Division over that 14-year span. But there was also a third original Sounders franchise that was active from 1974 to 83 that played in the NASL. And Seattle, again, as we've kind of already hinted at, one of the most successful clubs in league history here since coming in 2009. They've got 4 US Open Cup championships, including in their first season, which like maybe not as surprising considering it was a club that already had roots put down, already had a roster that they kind of retooled around, right? Coming from USL Division 1 up to MLS. They also won the Shield in 2014, and they have 2 MLS Cup victories in 2016 and 2019, respectively. And this is maybe the most impressive stat about the Sounders, absent their trophy cabinet there, E. They qualified for the playoffs every year from expansion until 2022, which was formerly the longest streak in league history. Now that's taken by New York Red Bull, who I think are at 15 seasons and counting. But to do that from expansion all the way to the middle of the Biden administration is pretty damn impressive. And 2022, when they missed the playoffs, that was the only season in club history that they have been lower than 7th in the Shield standings. Wow. And they've made CONCACAF Champions League 7 times. And of course, they were the first MLS club to win the modern version of CCL in that 2022 season. And like, I think the thing is, if memory serves, if they weren't going all out in CONCACAF that year, they probably make the final. I think Joao Paulo tore his ACL in the final that year. Like, again, like even the one season that they dropped out of MLS postseason contention, they did what no MLS club has done before, winning, the CONCACAF Champions League there. So this, again, not just this season, which we can get into how deep this damn team is right now, but again, historically great franchise.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even have all those numbers to support my initial kind of introduction there where I said this is just a club that's really good consistently. Like, that's a ridiculous track record to hear from them. I mean, they just, you look at their team. I don't know where they fell at, for the compensation and everything like that in regards to their spend on their roster. But it's like they're getting the most out of Christian Roldan. They're getting a ton out of Jordan Mortis when he's healthy and fire. And you got Nuhu on the back line, who's a fantastic talent. Stephen Fry in the goal, very, very good goalkeeper. What's his name? Josh Bell, Jordan Bell.
John Bell. Yeah.
John Bell. He's been a nice surprise for them. I mean, watching these guys play in Club World Cup was fun. I know that they didn't win a game, but like I thought that they were impressive in the games that they played. Absolutely. And they hung around with some of the teams that, the world knows. I mean, PSG was coming off winning the European Championship, correct? So like this is they put on a really impressive showing, in my opinion. I thought what they did was great for MLS as a whole. I mean, you talk about Rusnak as well, Pedro de la Vega, who we were super high on last year.
Unfortunately,
Masovsky's come on and been really great for them as well. You see Reed Baker Whiting, who's a homegrown player who we've seen at the pitch. We've seen him at Q and everything. Yeah. So like, this is just a team that's just really, really well built. And like I said, they're very well coached. And the structure and organization they have just leads to continued success for this team. And they just keep getting the most out of all their guys. They're impressive. Obed Vargas. I mean, he's fantastic as well. So like, this is a good team, man. We're going to have our hands full. Hopefully, they're feeling a bit of, I mean, they didn't have to travel, right? They were playing at, were they playing at Lumen?
I think they played one game away from Lumen, but again, they were fine. They were mostly home.
Yeah, it wasn't like they were traveling like these other teams were and everything like that. Yeah. But I mean, I know that the last time we saw them in MLS play, it was Bell and Nuhu,
I think Reagan, Bell and Nuhu are on red card suspension.
Suspended, correct? Yes. So they shouldn't have those two guys, at least, right?
They won't, yeah.
Yes. Okay. Jesus, I forgot they fucking had Ferreira.
Yeah, dude. So, and looking at this roster build too on the chart, the sheets that we have here from the league, this is a 3-3 build. They have no U22s.
Nope.
So like this team could be even deeper, and they could add some like really high caliber talent here going into the home stretch when the summer window opens next month. And like, right, you mentioned the 3 DPs with Rusnak, Morris, and De La Vega. Jordan Morris has been injured the majority of the season, but he's on the mend. I believe he got some minutes in the group stage of the Club World Cup. You mentioned, right, Jesus Ferreira, TAM player, came over in the trade with FC Dallas this offseason. I think that trade was $2.3 million in GAM, and then Leo Chu went back to Dallas in that trade. Arriola was a trade as well from Dallas, $300K GAM, conditional first-round pick. He tore his ACL in like week 2 or 3 this year, though, so unfortunate for Seattle and of course, Arriola. But this is still just, this is just like, and Yamar, I think is hurt right now, which is another boost for us. And I guess like before we kind of get out of the Club World Cup talk, one thing that has been, I think we may have talked about this on an episode over the last week or so, that Lumen Field, right, infamously turf surface, right? Yep. We dealt with that a lot with Sebastian Driussi, and he went up there. He got injured at the Club World Cup at Lumen Field, but it was on natural grass because they replaced the turf field with natural grass for the Club World Cup. And now there are no more games at Lumen in the knockout stages, but Sounder at Heart, right, one of the Seattle outlets up there, is reporting that the grass is going to still be in place until, quote, at least after the Austin match. So we will, it appears, be playing on natural grass this weekend, and I'll take that.
Yeah, we'll definitely take that. Absolutely.
So some other acquisitions, right? We talked about Jesus and Arriola, right, coming over from Dallas. They bolstered that back line with Kim Ki-hee, who came back from South Korea. He had just spent the last 5 years with Ulsan HD, another team we saw in the Club World Cup. He won 4 Korean titles over there with Ulsan. But he went over to Ulsan. I didn't know this, that Ki-hee was a part of the 2019 Sounders MLS Cup championship team. So him coming back was a reunion and not really, a brand new landing spot for the center back. So I would imagine we see Jackson Reagan and Ki-hee as the 2 starting center backs here. I think we have potential for revenge on Reed Baker Whiting. I think he's the only guy that profiles as somebody who can fill in for Nuhu at left back, unless they're going to move a Cody Baker or an Alex Roldan over to that left side. But I think it's Baker Whiting's spot here.
Okay. Well, we'll always take that opportunity because he's a little bastard.
Yeah, I mean, and for those, the uninitiated here, right? Reed Baker Whiting, we were giving the business to from the stands back in 2023 when Tacoma, I think that was the first or second home game for Austin FC 2. Wemby doesn't like Reed Baker Whiting either. So we're going to take a pause here, silence the dog, and come back and talk more about Reed Baker Whiting. So back in the Reed Baker Whiting saga here, like we're giving him the business at Palmer Field. Then we win that game, right? What was the center back's name who got tossed from that game? We wanted him on a supplemental from Tacoma.
Oh, I remember
the big French guy?
Big guy, yeah.
Oh, it was huge.
I
forget his name. But so Austin ends up winning that game. 2 months later in the teenager game, Baker Whiting is starting against the first team. And of course, they come out victorious. So that kind of began our running joke of second team players losing to Austin FC 2 at the pitch and then coming and defeating Austin FC at Q2 Stadium. Gavin Beavers is on that list, right? Among others. So I think Baker Whiting, again, probably going to get the start here at left back. But good fucking luck, dude, against Osman. I think we have the advantage on that side this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, he was playing in the Club World Cup as well. So like I saw him a couple times get out there. So, he's been running a bit. Let's see what he's got.
Yeah. Well, and so like stylistically, right? Brian Schmetzer has been there, I think, since 2016. So I think he has coached both MLS Cup winning teams for Seattle, and his teams prefer historically to be building out from the back, maintaining possession, right? Specifically in the opponent's half, and trying to, imbalance our back line, pulling guys out of position and taking advantage of those spaces created. And you see them still doing that here this year with, I think expected success. They are 5th in MLS in possession right now, averaging 53.8% possession per game. And you see that also bearing out in some of their other offensive numbers. They're 2nd in the league in touches in the opposition penalty area, and they are 3rd in corners, but just 13th in XG. And that's just 1.4 more XG total than Austin. They do have a game in hand on the Verde and Black, but like that kind of speaks to me to when I've watched Seattle this year, they really struggle to score and take advantage of all the possession that they do have in that opposition half. Now, we'll knock on wood here and say they, hopefully they don't break through in that area this season. But like Jesus Ferreira, man, he's got one goal for this team. They're kind of underperforming across the board, like almost everybody, but like Albert Rusnak and Danny Musovski, who you mentioned, he's got 5 goals kind of in relief of these forwards who have been injured and underperforming.
Yeah, I mean, you look at their last 2 matchups in MLS as well. They got beat up by the other 2 top teams there in the Western Conference, with Minnesota and Vancouver handling them pretty soundly. I know that Vancouver game got a bit out of control with their red cards and everything like that, and that's part of the reason why I forgot they had Ferreira, because he only had 1 goal, and I was just like, oh my gosh, yeah. And I knew that he had been quiet all season, but like to see just a single goal from him is pretty shocking. We know how talented he is, but I'm going under the assumption that they're going to get that figured out with him, just because of who they are. Like you mentioned, Schmetzer, like the quality of coach that he is and the quality of player that Ferreira is. So like, I think that's going to be coming down the pipeline sooner rather than later.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, right, that's 5 straight losses across all competitions, but like even with the MLS opponents, right, it's still quality opponents that they were facing. So
I'm not counting those.
I don't think we should read too much into the recent form, but they are tied with Austin on 26 points. Like I mentioned, Seattle does have 1 game in hand. They are right at an even goal differential, 25-4 and 25 against here so far this season. Led in goal contributions by designated player Albert Rusnak. He is the maestro in the middle for them, pulling all of the strings, 7 goals and 3 assists. Danny Musovski, though, the Moose, our buddy Peage's favorite player, right? He's got 5 goals.
Yeah.
And again, been playing a lot more in relief of the injured Jordan Morris. So with Morris back, I would expect here that we're going to see Morris probably go 60, 75 and have Musovski maybe come in after him. Because Jordan Morris, dude, like he's still in, I would think, what we would call his prime, because he was scoring in bunches last year, kind of streaky, but still double-digit goal scorer. And he's got 3 goals in just 288 minutes so far this season. And the other guy I wanted to note statistically here is Paul Rothrock, another one of those supplemental roster guys. 2 goals, 3 assists, and he's the only Sounders player who has appeared in all 18 of their league matches. So is there anything else for you here on the Seattle personnel or play style that you want to talk about?
No, ready to move to us.
Yeah, let's talk about us. I mean, really, from a health standpoint, Julio is the only guy we are concerned with now. Again, in our hearts, we're concerned with Jimmy Farcarlin and his hamstring, but that's not going to play, a factor in this game on Saturday night. So we should get that Julio update from Nico on Thursday at press availability. I still think we're going to have him listed questionable at best and probably not active here. Mm-hmm. I would hope we get an update where it's like we're targeting LAFC at home next weekend to be available off the bench. What's your thinking on Cascante?
I mean, he's not starting either way. So like, sure, I'm not too worried about it, because he's just going to be depth at that point. And like, if we got to just run Sfati and BHI, I'm totally fine with that. So I'm hoping that he's progressing well and everything like that, but I did not expect him to start or make an impact on this game anyway. So hope he's fine.
Well, and if he is out, as you and I expect, then we will get, you would think, another short-term call-up, and you've got Gomez and Van Ryn both on 3 now, so remains to be seen. I think now that we're kind of level here, I don't know which guy I favor to get this in terms of what I think is going to happen. Van Ryn has been the guy in favor of late, but that could totally just be because he had agreements to burn, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it could be either guy, and I'm fine either way. We need the body.
Yeah, I don't have a lean either way there.
Well, and so like we talked about this in terms of the lineup, right, and potential changes. We talked about that multiple times during the listener questions on Sunday, and shout out to everybody once again for sending those in. Do you have any changes to this lineup? I mean, the first place we're talking about is left wing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really the only place to talk about, in my opinion. I think everything else seems pretty locked in with how guys are playing and what we have available right now. I would not be shocked to see an Izuni start. I really would not. Like, it would not catch me off guard. I would not be like, oh God, or anything like that. I also would not be shocked if Johnny started. So like, as we also mentioned on the listener questions episode there, we have three options that we feel pretty good about. Like, I feel fine with Johnny, I feel fine with Mirtu, and I feel fine with Robbie Taylor potentially slotting in there. I think, like I mentioned on the last episode, answering those questions, that our ceiling lineup has Mirtu starting at left wing, and then you can bring Johnny in for Dessler when that time comes, when we need to get Dessler out of the game, because we've seen when he's had extended periods of time, he becomes a little bit injury prone. So like, that's where I'm at. But either way, those two are 1A, 1B for me in regard to Johnny and Mirtu. And I'm totally fine with whoever we want to start there. I hope Mirtu has had some good go at practice here and getting back into the groove and everything like that, and that he's building his confidence up, because we got to get him going. He's got to get going. We are not going to accomplish what we want to accomplish this season without getting him going somehow, some way. We cannot write this dude off. He cannot become a bench piece for us moving forward. We're not going to be good if that's the case. So like, I need to see him play well, which I thought he did in his reserve time versus
Red Bull.
Red Bulls. Yes. Which I thought he was fine with. So like, I'm totally fine with any of those three guys getting the nod there.
Yeah. And I'd be, I think I'd be most surprised if it was Taylor getting the call here.
Yes.
And I think also, to be fair, I think the way the roster stands right now, he is solely a right wing option to this coaching staff. But Jader Obrian can start on the left, and I would rank him fourth out of those four guys, but I think I would also be fine. Like, we have started less exciting options on the wing in our team's history. So I think I'm with you, man. Like, the rest of the lineup, I'm not shocked to see a tweak here or there, right? If Ilya gets back in, okay, like, it makes some sense to me. I do think we're going to see the other 10 spots be the same, though. And maybe I think the only way that we see significant changes is if we see a formational switch adjusting to what we think Seattle is going to do. But I think we're going to roll with what brought us into the break, winning 2 games in a row, and winning 2 games in a row fairly handily, right? The only time you concede is Vasquez putting it into our own net.
Yep. And this is building some continuity with our lineup and everything like that. So I'm all for it. You get a really good test here with this Seattle club. We've talked about how Austin has played the top 4 teams in the Western Conference multiple times now. I think I can't remember if the top 4 are all the teams we've played twice at this point, but we've had this schedule, and now you get this team who's right there with us, obviously a game in hand, but like, this is going to be a good test for us to see where we're really at.
Unless you have anything else to add, man. How much is Austin FC winning by on Saturday night? Again, a 9:30 kickoff out there in Seattle.
I'm going to say it's a 1-1 draw, and I'm going to be happy with that.
Yeah, I'm dancing around that. And I think I'm going to be, no, fuck that. 2-1 victory, Austin FC.
All right.
Come on down to Farmer Field where the champions play. Get ready for the game. It's last business day.
Last business day here on episode 235 of the North End podcast, and we are back at home this Friday here, taking on Sporting KC2. This is a 7:30 kickoff out there at Palmer Field, and this is, excuse me. Yeah, this is a home match. Okay. My mistake. I'm sitting here looking at the head-to-head matchups, and on FOTMob, they already list August's matchup, and that will be up there in Kansas. So this one, another meeting with SKC2 at Palmer Field, the second of the season. That first meeting was a 0-0 draw on May 3rd. That's a bad draw, man. This team is the lone winless team in MLS Next Pro. Sporting 2 has just 9 goals for in their 12 games. They have given up 28 goals. So to not get a goal there at home, again, was just part of the story of this second team kind of struggling out of the gate here in 2025. They did end up getting, Austin FC that is, did end up getting that second point, winning 7-6 in the shootout. But that was also the Peter Grogan red card game. So I don't think we have seen Peter start for Austin FC2 since that match back on May 2nd, rather. I think I said May 3rd earlier, but look, man, there's not much to say about this Sporting KC2 side. Like, some of the names to watch out for. Number 38, Gumbale, I think is how you say that. I don't think it's Gumball, but he's got 3 assists, which, for only 9 goals scored on the season is a significant number. We know Brian Ariano is out there, right? Former Austin FC Academy product, former Austin FC 2 player. He's wearing number 35 for Sporting 2. And he's the only player on their roster that has at least 1 goal and 1 assist in terms of contributions. And he has exactly that, 1 goal and 1 assist. And then number 52, Tashandrit, is another name to watch. He gave us some problems back in May. He and Gumbale are the only 2 players, I believe, that have started all 12 games for Sporting. And then Cameron Habibullah, I think, has only played 7 times for this team this season. But he's another name, kind of a holdover from last year, who has given us some issues in the past. I don't believe our boy Pau Vidal, the big forward, I don't think Vidal is still there, but Habibullah is still out here kicking around with Sporting too. So, this is going to be another game with no first team match this weekend. A little bit of a break in terms of the Austin FC fan base and games that we have to attend and watch. I would imagine we're going to get a pretty nice crowd out here on a Friday night at 7:30. So definitely looking forward to this one. You got anything else on this match, maybe from our side, right? We could be missing one of those center backs with the call up, right? So I think in that instance, you see Daniel Chesla slot in, and hopefully Riley Thomas is good to go after this little break here and slots right back in there.
I mean, not a whole lot to add to this outside of what you said there, because it's like this is a bad team in this next pro league, and you've got to beat up on these teams when you're sitting where Austin is sitting right now. And I remember seeing this draw come in, not scoring on this team, and that like really igniting and initiating the fact that like this team seemed to be in some big trouble with how they were performing, because this had to be one of the low points of the season for us. Obviously, we know Jimmy a bit banged up here, so like you're going to be missing some guys, but I think obviously enough to get this job done. Yeah. And I mean, you can't really. Can you run CJ Friday here? Can you do that?
That was one of the things I was going to say to kind of close this out is I want to see if CJ's out there. I want to see the health of Jimmy and Ruben Bonachera if they're back active. I could see them both coming off the bench when they do return, because it has been a little bit of a lengthy absence for both of those guys. But, is CJ still in Austin, or is he making the trip up to Seattle? That's something to watch. And then again, I want to see consistent starts from both Micah Burton and Irvin Torres. So I want to see those guys out there once again. Anything else for you here? We pulling the lever?
I'm not pulling the lever.
Winless team at home that you already didn't beat?
Look, I pulled the lever for the Galaxy when they were winless. I can't be pulling a bunch of levers for teams that haven't won a fucking game. You know what I mean?
Like halfway through the season.
3-0 Austin. Go ahead, have some fun. Kill these dudes. They suck. Back at the pitch. Gonna have some fans there. It's gonna be beautiful. So yeah, go handle your business, man. You don't even need me. I don't got no levers or nothing. Just go handle your fucking business.
All right. No levers or nothing. I'm going to go. What's that?
You pull it.
I'll pull it. It's pulled. I basically pulled it on Sunday.
Oh, my God.
I said we might have to pull the lever on this one. You can't lose this game. You can't lose this. You need at least 2 points. Give us 3. And I like your prediction better than mine. I got 2-0. We don't care how you get it done, boys. Just bring us home the 3 points. And I think that does it for us here on episode 235 of the North End podcast. When you're listening to this, the Wednesday slate has already kicked off. But if you are so inclined, you have already checked out the midweek picks for the full MLS slate tonight. So we will discuss those on Sunday's episode. We will get a best ball update, also get, some best ball scoring here tonight during Wednesday's games. But we'll be back on Sunday talking about that nonsense, recapping the first team's match out there in Seattle against the Sounders, recapping the second team's match at home against Sporting KC2, and talking about everything else that happens in the Austin FC universe between now and then. It is that time of the year, my friends, less than a month away from the summer transfer window. So keep your eyes on the rumor mill as well. Anything else for you before we shut it down?
Yeah, shout out my Flamengo team for winning Group D in the Club World Cup, baby. Shout out my boys.
All right, shout out there. Shout out to Stephanie FC, I guess, as well. If you know, you know. And that'll do it for us. We appreciate you if you've tuned in and stuck with us here to the end of episode 235. And we will be back, like I said, on Sunday for our regularly scheduled episode. Enjoy the rest of your week, everybody. We'll do the same, and we'll see you back here on Sunday. Until then, he's E, and I'm Zach. Vamos Austin FC, everybody. Goodbye.